yeah. Thank you.
All right. Last chunk of sessions before we just go absolutely ham tonight. Can I get everybody in the back to sit down and shut up? Thank you. Or just shut up. Yeah, you can stand and shut up. Thanks, everybody. I want to take this time to introduce another one of our media buying partners, Will Perry and the team over at Reason Agency. Big whoop. Long-time OGs in the space, great track record, doing really well with us. And what I asked Will to chat about was his unfettered, really true-to-the-heart opinions about Andromeda, as well as advice, and coming up with the changes seen by Meta that he's experiencing firsthand, and the advice that he has for all of our media partners. So, kicking it over to Will. All you, bud. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you. Yep, absolutely. You guys like the headline? Obviously, a marketer, right? Had to write a good headline for you guys. So, everything that I'm going to go through today is actually in this playbook. Everyone can get it. So, I'll keep the link up at the end, but thepaidtrafficinsiders.com/Andromeda playbook. So all.
Drop the
I have that domain. That domain actually cost me 10 grand, and then they sent it to me later, and we'd already been running everything on that. So it happens. A lot of what we're going to go through today is in the playbook as well. So don't feel like you've got to take a ton of notes or anything like that. Also, 3 primary things that we're going to cover. I'm going to break down the new algorithm updates, strategy adjustments, and then basically what this all means in plain English. If we haven't met before, but I do think there's a few in the back that have been in our community before as well, so it's actually kind of cool to meet some of those guys in person. I've been in paid traffic since 2010. My team and I have generated more than 200 million in online sales. We've spent a shit ton on ads. I've built programs for CXL and AdWorld, and I've spoken at Affiliate Summit, and we've done about 20 million in commissions in the last 2 years alone. So I've been in the space for a while. We own a mastermind called Power Affiliate Army, a media buying community called Paid Traffic Insiders, and Reason is our agency that we do all of our media buying through. So if we haven't met before, there's not a whole lot that I haven't seen in the space from a media buying perspective, and I just kind of lay it all out there. I'm not really, some of you guys that I've had a chance to chat with so far, I kind of just give all the sauce, and I just kind of believe in paying it forward. So what I wanted to start with is, got a bunch of citations in some of this stuff as well, but kind of break down in plain English, what exactly has happened with Andromeda. I'm actually going to go to the timeline first. So you guys are in forums, telegrams, Facebook groups, Slack groups, whatever. And you probably didn't realize, many of you maybe, that the Andromeda update actually goes back to December of 24. Some of us who've been in telehealth for a while know about some of the early January custom event optimization, over purchase event optimization that we had to be rolling through. But a lot of this actually started last year, and so I remember a lot of media buyers over the summer being like, man, ads suck, ads suck. How many of you guys were just really struggling with ad performance over the summer? Only one? Okay, yeah, okay, stick your hands up. So I mean, as we know, when these updates hit, we have to evolve our strategies, right? We have to be willing to do things differently than what we haven't necessarily done before. So I just kind of wanted to share the timeline on this as well. And in October, and this is when we actually rolled out the playbook, even just within the last couple weeks, that the final rollout of Andromeda was actually complete. And we've obviously touched on things a little bit, bits and pieces over the last couple days, but the biggest thing that we really need to understand about the Andromeda update is that the system is leaning, it's funny because I've actually been teaching this for a long time, message-driven targeting, creative-driven targeting. The creative is doing the targeting for us. And I've got a whole Miro board type breakdown of how you guys should be thinking about structuring your creatives and things like that. But the creative signals and how we develop creatives based on levels of awareness is really what is going to separate all of our ability to be able to generate performance in this new era of especially Meta specifically. You know, we're not able to sort of like, and I know everyone's been running broad and this, that, or the other, but still tons of interest-based targeting, lookalikes, and things like that have been working significantly well. So even through this whole process, even prior to this whole process is what I mean. And so essentially, you know, if you kind of want to go through this in a little bit more detail, you know, you're welcome to, you know, take a screenshot or whatever. But essentially, the retrieval system is operating in a way where ads are being micro-personalized to the individual. So the way that I might see an ad versus the way that Adam sees an ad, or the messaging, and how that whole entire architecture is just completely changing through this Andromeda update, which means that we need to change the way that we test and develop content as well. And I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail also. Kind of touched on this already in terms of why it matters, but let's get into like more of the strategy adjustments specifically. And this is what I was kind of referring to. A lot of us has probably done a lot of like micro variations of content, winning ads, etc. I've taught that stuff for years. Take one winning ad, turn it into 100, figure out how to maximize performance on your top performing creative. Well, now we are actually, instead of micro variation, we are going through macro variation. And macro variation is going to be more through angles, messaging types, awareness levels, as well as what we like to call internally creative archetypes. Essentially, think of it like creative formats and ways to be able to reach the avatar. I've actually got like a whole little grid structure and whatnot that I'm going to share with you guys. But that is probably the biggest change with Meta. Is you used to be able to really like squeeze a lot of juice out of winning ads. And you can still squeeze a lot of juice out of winning ads, but you have to figure out how to take that concept and now turn it into another concept. And all of us are just learning this on the fly, to be completely honest, right? Like, we're still figuring things out and how to adjust in this format as well. But one of the other biggest things within this new model as well is, and some of you guys have, you know, maybe been doing this for a little bit, but Meta really wants to see mass diversification of creatives with massive ad sets, you know, 8 to 20 ads or even more. Some of you guys maybe have preferences and things like that. I'll share a little bit of a 3x3 model that we're basically experimenting with now. But in the past, I used to teach a model which was, I called it ad variable isolation. And it was one ad in an ad set where you would basically split test 3 versions of that same ad in the ad set, and you'd control micro variation within spend within individual creative tests. And that worked like gangbusters. And we're still even doing that to some degree today. But now we're moving more into a mass consolidation of creative testing. And that's really what Meta is looking for. They're really looking for the ability to be able to personalize mass volume of ad creative to the entire audience. And so that's where a lot of the consolidation with regards to Advantage Plus at the ad set level, at, you know, Advantage campaigns, but we're still prioritizing all of our hook variations. How many of you guys are doing, you know, hook variations of creatives and doing it in mass volume? Just quick show of hands. A couple in the front here. Cool. That is still absolutely a priority, but some of the things that maybe we used to do in the past, like for us, we'd develop one version of a creative and we'd have 10 different headlines, meaning text overlay headlines on that same creative, and micro test all of those versions and scale the winners. Now we're having to look more at full hook optimization, which typically the hook is going to, you know, be made up of 3 parts. You've got the text overlay headline, you've got the motion, and often what I call just sort of the audio hook, the thing that is said, you know, in the first 3 seconds of the video, right? But those first 10 seconds are your way of being able to diversify a mass library of content, because and what all this is gearing towards is we have to significantly increase our content production. And so we have to do one of 2 things: staff up our content teams or figure out a way to mass produce content in a very efficient and effective way, or else we're just not going to be able to compete and maintain CPA and spend over a long period of time. Let me jump to this. This is definitely a slide that you guys are going to want to screenshot. This is essentially what Meta wants to see. Meta wants to see a creative testing campaign. We call that phase 2. Some of you guys, were like, what is this traffic campaign thing? That's phase 1. So phase 1 is where we actually test hundreds of versions of individual ads on a traffic campaign objective. And then we look for early signals where we are looking at cost per 25% video view. We're looking at hook rate. We're looking at hold rate. That way we can get mass volume of creative testing done without spending 10, 15, 20 times the budget from a conversion objective perspective. But the thing that I wanted to show you here is typically in the past, we'd have one ad set, right? And this one ad set we used to test in 2 ways. One way would be one main version of the ad and then an exact duplicate of the ad. Has anybody ever tested like that before? I know Adam has. Because Adam's definitely seen our stuff for sure. But now what they want to see is they want to see 3 completely different versions of ads. So think of this like, core video 1, core video 2, core video 3, and then messaging variation. So I'm looking at this more in terms of like a 3x3 block. I think you can do it in a 4x3 block where you'd have 4 different creatives, but then messaging variations all within one ad set. This is not a CBO testing campaign. We personally still prioritize control. I want as much control as I can. I know a lot of people are like, oh, let Meta do everything. And I'm like, y'all know what happens when you give Meta all the budget. They just throw it into creatives oftentimes that you don't want them to spend on. And so this is just an example, like if you had 9 different versions of individual videos and separating them by ad set. Because remember, these ad sets are still going to be limited by budget, right? So if you're spending $1,000 per ad set, especially when we're running direct meds, right? Like we have to hit $300 CPAs or less, roughly. We need to be able to test at 2 to 3 times CPA per ad set. So all of these ad sets, budgets are always set at typically 2 to 3 times daily spend because we want to be able to see at least 1 conversion a day in the first 24 hours of when we're spending. We're early killing those tests, so that way we're not overspending on tests that are just directly eating into profit, right? So we're really big on early kill points. I'm not big, and I do not teach the whole give it 48 hours, let it run 7 days, this, that, or the other. That's just losses. I'm not a believer in that. I've never been a fan of that. We all know when we see winning ads early, right? Who knows when they see a winning ad, it shows itself pretty quick, right? You're like CPM hits, CPC hits, click-through rate hits. We know when we see it early, there's no reason to overspend on tests that are just never going to work out. I've never seen an ad that was over KPI get to KPI after like a few days just because I let it run a few more days. To
add on to that point, one of my secrets was I just launch at huge budgets because I know I'm going to get best traffic on day 1.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely you got to be really confident in the creative, right? It's a little bit of a scaling strategy. I mean, there's definitely times when we go full send, especially when we've just been hammering it, and we'll come out of the gate, spending obviously 20, 30 grand a day. No problem.
Facebook's looking for the highest converted customers to assess the quality of that app.
Correct. Yep, exactly. I thought I saw another hand. Yeah.
Yeah, so I spent 3 colors. Will you mix and match like an image and a video in the same ad set, or that would be like a different ad set?
Great question, yeah. Yeah, great question. I personally do not like mixing video and images in the ad set, and as we know, typically videos are going to get prioritized and spend over images. The reason that I actually broke these down by colors because oh shit, I actually have some creative stuff to share with you guys. What slide was that on? Okay, this slide. I must have reorganized them. The thing that Meta wants to see is Meta actually, how many of you guys have actually just gotten rid of your remarketing campaigns, especially on the affiliate side, maybe even in-house, right? And the reason for that is and this is what we're experimenting with now, and the reason that I color-coded this, cold traffic, warm traffic, hot traffic, or in other words, problem aware, solution aware, most aware, right? So some of you guys have mentioned ads fueling other ads, right? Within an ad set or in a campaign. This is the type of structure that from my understanding, and we're still doing a lot of testing on this, obviously, but that Meta wants to see. Meta wants to see consolidated campaign structure where there's actually levels of awareness within the entire test. These are almost like mini campaigns, right? Because these creatives are all working together. This is going to be a super broad, large audience, right? Because it's actually cold traffic. I still joke to this day, like the people that label their top of funnel campaigns cold traffic, but then they're just running offers, like that's not cold traffic. Like that's bottom of funnel, right? And so this is gonna, open up the audience. This is gonna move them into consideration phase. This is gonna close them out, right? So generally speaking, and what I want to go back to here on this slide is, this is the part that I think that most marketers still mess up to this day. And this is the part that we will all get exposed on within this current Andromeda update is, if you guys just don't simply understand ad copy and level of awareness, we are still going to struggle with performance on a day-to-day basis. Because if you're writing an ad and you don't realize that that ad is written through a lens of developing a story, well, stories typically resonate with problem unaware prospects, right? They're not aware yet of the problem that they have, right? So we're sort of guiding them through this story that ultimately leads them to understanding that there's a problem. They're now becoming more solution aware. We position problem solution, do X and Y time, kind of stuff from a messaging headline perspective. And most aware, which is a lot of what telehealth and GLP-1 advertising has been chilling down here in this promise and offer space, like $199 fast shipping, we'll beat this price, that price, this, that, or the other. But the real long-term strategy is going to be in these top two areas, right? We've got to be able to figure out ways to hit on those emotional pain points, like Adam's been talking about a lot in the last couple days. And that is when I was first sort of going through all of the Andromeda, there's a whole, developer thing on this on Meta's website or whatever. The first thing I thought to myself, I was like, you just got to be better at marketing now. Like, you just got to be better at marketing. And I was like, I know I'm going to be good because, has anybody ever read the book Great Leads? It's one of my favorite books. Great Leads, probably, in my opinion, it's probably like a couple $100 on Amazon now. I don't even think you can get it. When I originally bought it, like probably 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I think it was like maybe 30, 40 bucks. The cool thing about that book is it shows how to match ad copy with level of awareness, VSL copy, landing page copy, however you want to slice it. And a lot of times I think as advertisers, we just like write ads and we're not really sure like who we're actually talking to. And that's going to get exposed or highlighted, in fact, just even more within this Andromeda update. So if we match sort of this whole piece here of how strategy from a messaging perspective needs to evolve, and then we go back here to this actual setup structure, you can see, hopefully you can see how much more content we're going to need to be able to develop in order to effectively creative test on a day-to-day basis. So just kind of marrying those two things together there. Let me jump back here real quick. So to kind of summarize, one campaign, a few ad sets. This is that structure that I was referring to, so kind of a 3x3 model or a 4x3 model. Again, this is just going to be dictated with how high you're setting your budgets at, right? I mean, if you're testing at 5, 6, 7 times CPA, so we're talking 22 grand or more, and you've got 12, that's actually supposed to say 12, my bad. If you've got 12 ads in that ad set, you can effectively test at 2,100 a day with 12 ads in an ad set, right? Those individual ads are actually going to get spend. Maybe not all of them, especially in the first 24 hours, but the spend is set high enough in order to be able to test that much volume. Basically what we're now doing is we are now measuring performance at the concept level, right? So to kind of jump back again, let me go back to the picture here. Ideally, you're testing like similar versions of, concepts here instead of, just completely divergent concepts. I've always been sort of the frame of mind that I want to compare apples and apples versus apples to oranges, because these ads are basically competing against each other. And I've got an example of that for you guys right here, which is the Creative Archetypes database. We're actually training our ad creative strategist AI based on these ad structures now, essentially on all of our creative research, all of that good stuff, so that when we are concepting new content types, we're actually doing it based on SOPs and things like that. So I'll jump back to that. But I want to just sort of recap here again real quick on the structures. We're now looking at, because of the setup, we're now looking at and grading this whole testing structure as one unit, versus in the past, right, we judge individual ads, right? So because, especially when you're running a higher CPA type account, you can lose a lot of money really fast, right? So we have to be able to get these early kill signals in order to, because I could spend $2,100 in 12 hours here, right? I got to be able to kill this whole group of concepts really early, $200 in spend, $300 in spend tops, so that I'm actually saving the $1,800 to $1,900 that I can move into the next test, right? I'm always an advocate of just kill it, move the budget into the next test.
Was that your, when do you know when to kill? Is it 2 to 300?
Yeah, good question. How Adam was sharing earlier, like upper funnel events and things like that. There's a variety of ways that we look at upper funnel events. For like a direct meds, like an add to cart, a start quiz, those are great upper funnel events where when we know those benchmarks, if we're not hitting those numbers, again, we're getting way out ahead of overspending on creative tests, right? The other things that we can be looking at, obviously we can be looking at CPMs, we can be looking at CPCs, we can be looking at CTRs, but probably most effectively, we can be looking at hook rates and hold rates. The reason that I love hook rate is always going to be that really early indicator to how well the content is capturing attention, right? Are we getting curiosity? Are we stopping the scroll? Are people even paying any attention to what we're doing? So those are great ways to save a ton of budget that we can just move into the next round of tests. So yeah, great question there. I wanted to be able to put all this into visuals for you guys, so that's why I'm kind of jumping back around a little bit. Let me just jump back. And then I'm going to break down this ad because I've added a few things in here as well after just kind of chatting with some of you guys over the last couple of days. Okay, we touched on that. Already covered all that. We covered all that. Cool. Let me jump back to tying these two things together. So the predominant ad creative that we run for probably the last 5 years is what I call the native VSL. This is an example of an offer that we used to run for a long time. It was from an affiliate perspective. And this is an ad concept that I teach pretty religiously. And this ad concept works like this. Generally, it's 45 to 90 seconds. It is a truly ugly ad. It's not overproduced. It's not shot from a Sony high-res camera. It is typically iPhone-style content shot from a creator, a customer, etc., that looks and feels like an organic post or content, which is also what Meta wants. It was in some of the documentation that I didn't touch on earlier. But Meta wants content that feels real and authentic. So the less that it looks like an ad, the more native or organic that the content feels, right? And as we probably all know, and hopefully we know this, we get rewarded with lower CPMs with that content too, right? When it doesn't look like an ad, we get lower CPMs. When we get lower CPMs, we get lower CPCs, and that helps our EPC, right? And so basically what this whole concept is the video starts with this sort of organic hook concept, right? It's very relatable to the outcome or problem that the prospect is dealing with. But then it transitions, as you can see, this is literally black and white, and then this transitions into brand content, right? And at this point, this is sort of what we call the core or the body of the ad. This is where the selling is actually happening. We're talking about before and after, we're handling objections, we're framing the solution, we're talking about the transformation that the customer is going to have using the product, right? That's what we want to handle in, let's say, seconds 11 through 60. I think we were talking about this last night, right? So that's sort of the core to the video. obviously the front end, we all know what hook means, but this sort of allows the content to sort of slide under the radar. I've often sort of talked about this concept of like ad resistance. This allows you to get past ad resistance, right? I always tell this story. My desk is at the front of my house. I've got these 2 windows. My computer faces like this. I always see the solicitors that are about to walk down my driveway across my front door, or across my sidewalk and come up to the front door, and I'm on Zoom calls and stuff, and I'm like, fucking go away. I'm on a call, right? And like, it doesn't matter what they have to sell, what they have to say, whether it's good or not. I don't want to hear anything that comes out of their mouth because I'm not prepared basically to have this conversation with them, right? I want to encourage you guys to look at your ads creative this way as well. You don't want to sort of trigger resistance to the feed because people are just ignoring you, right? That's why CPMs are high. If they're not ignoring you, that means that they're engaging with you, right? So understanding that aspect of engagement is really important because it's sort of the first micro conversion to the entire conversion-based process. So this is just a structure that we pretty much run on almost everything. We call it the native VSL. The reason we call it the native VSL, it starts off with native content and just transitions into basically like a 60-second video sales letter, right? All the normal stuff. A lot of you guys have written VSLs. And you can kind of be more direct about that whole process there. But if it started off as a VSL, people are going to kind of ignore it, right? And that's the big thing there. So when we go back and look at the Andromeda update, it takes a lot of work to develop this content, right? So when I referred to earlier, like we've got to be ready to either staff up from a content perspective or figure out a way to get content cost effectively. I'm still a little, I'm not all in on the AI creative yet. The mouth sync is just not quite there yet for me. I've seen it in some situations where like it works when there's like a little bit of distance between, sort of the frame of the camera and just, how the face is working. But it just means that we're going to have to develop a whole lot of creative, and I wanted to be able to give you guys a structure that you could literally use starting today. I mean, I spend millions, all the time on this stuff. So let's see, let's just jump back, and all of that is built on this archetypes type structure. So if you're, one of the things that we briefly touched on is, Meta wants to see macro variation versus micro variation, right? Macro variation would be figuring out a way to tell the before and after through a testimonial journey where we're not fundamentally changing the level of awareness of the messaging, we're changing the way that we are structuring the message. And similar things of like, demonstrating proof or, reasons why or things like that. We don't want to change the message because if we change the message, we will often get a different customer, right? Could be good, could be bad. If you're intentionally doing it, then it's good. If you're unintentionally doing it, it could be bad because that's how you sort of lose the audience. CPAs wind up rising. You're not able to scale. You have to pull performance back, right? Or pull spend back. So this sort of archetypes database, definitely would recommend taking a screenshot of this because this should be sort of the core of how you guys develop content in mass or I should say capability, so that you can basically test volume of creative structures because everybody wants to scale to 20, 30, 40 grand a day, right? So we're going to need to be able to do this stuff. And we're going to need to be able to train our teams, our creative teams, whatever. So those are some of the strategy adjustments from the creative side. Now on the targeting side, how am I doing on time? Almost at time actually, and then we'll do some questions. We're still using a lot of lookalikes, guys. I don't know how many of you guys are not using lookalikes and stuff, but we are still using a lot of lookalikes for obviously our testing and our scaling campaigns. So we're still doing that. I'm not just like all broad all the time. We are still using a lot of interest in lookalikes, but more simplified account structure, right? The consolidated creative testing. In the past, what did we have there? 9 different ad set or 9 different creatives. All of those in the past would have been 9 different ad sets the way that I used to test. Those also could have maybe been as much as 18 different ad sets if I was just testing one version of the ad. So we're trying to play nice while also trying to have some control at the same time. And just the retargeting layer is going away a little bit, right? We're picking up a lot of warm traffic. Everyone's been seeing that in their shopping campaigns already for like the last 1 to 2 years anyways. Especially, with, affiliate style accounts. I can't even think of a situation where we're running retargeting right now. It just doesn't really make sense for us. So in plain English, to summarize everything that we've sort of touched on today, number one, the update is going to demand us to just be better marketers. If we don't understand those levels of awareness, if we don't understand how to develop the messaging and the creative based on those levels of awareness, if we don't understand how to create content in volume based on that messaging, and I'm not trying to scare you guys, but based on those levels of awareness, like we're just going to struggle. Like we're not going to be able to drive volume, and that's what Adam wants, right? Like Adam wants volume out of his partners. And then the second thing is we're just going to need to expand our creative teams. Like we're going to need to staff up with video editors. We're going to need, if you haven't already, developed a pool of UGC creators, highly suggest that you do that now. I mean, that's kind of a little bit old news at this point, but you guys are going to need that content. And I see as well on the creative strategist side. How many of you guys have a creative strategist like on your team? Okay, there's a few. But I mean, I've met tons of agencies who don't even have creative strategists. I mean, we've had creative strategists on our team for probably going back 4 years now. We're just creative strategy. Like the media buyers are also responsible for creative strategy, but creative strategists, all they're doing is strategizing creative, working with creators, with video editors, et cetera, and analyzing the performance of the content. So those are the two main things that I wanted you guys to just really understand about this new era. Consolidated structure, significantly more volume in content, increase your capabilities in terms of messaging output, total creative output, and then consider expanding your teams. I know that means that it's going to cost a lot more money, but if we want to compete, that's just what we're going to need to do. And then here's the playbook as well. So www.thepaidtrafficinsiders.com/playbook. Everything that we talked about today is in there. Everything with the creative archetypes database is in there. And then there's a bunch of other stuff around our whole entire creative operating system that you guys could mess around with as well. So that's what I got. Hopefully you liked it. Yep.
Thank you so much, Will. Really appreciate that. There's a couple things that I want to call out that from stuff you talked about.